Hey everyone, my name is Salam, and I am a part of the DC Public Library's Teen Council. And today, for the Teen Talk, we have Rashad Bora, who is an author, and I'm just going to let him introduce himself real quickly.
Yeah, so hi, I'm Rishab Bora, and I am a junior at Homestead High School, which is located in the San Francisco Bay Area. Um, so last year I published my first novel, The Door to Inferna, and it's going to be part of the El Gloria series. And basically, what it's about is like main character Kai. He's like a regular boy from like this world. He has unusual purple eyes and he starts getting this kind of visions and things like that. And so then he stumbles through a portal and ends up in another world. In this other world, he discovers he is the wizard prince from a kingdom and that he has a twin sister who is the princess and the heir to that kingdom. Then one of his best friends gets kidnapped by this dark mystical entity called Triskane, and he ends up in this war between the magical land and Triskane to save his friend.
Awesome. Very interesting. So, do you remember a specific moment where the vision of this Alcoria land was sparked?
Yeah, so okay, it started with like playing with my friends. So like when we were kids, we did role plays. We pretended to be like fantastic creatures and had these like fantasy storylines for these little games we played. We'd run around the yard and jump on the trampoline. And the process of actually recording the world started kind of randomly. I was texting my friend about one of these games we were playing, and suddenly I wanted to write everything up into a bunch of documents. And so I added stuff and changed stuff and did research into things like mythology and science. And I created this world to a very expansive degree. I fixated on consistency and coherency, so I kind of like worked to make sure everything interacted and had a system, and make sure that the rules didn't change. Then the moment I actually wanted to write the story was in seventh grade. There was a creative writing unit in my literature class, and I got this idea to use one of those characters my friends and I like played in those games for a story in that class. My teacher was supportive of my writing, so I decided to begin writing more. So, the initial story I made was it was to explore these worlds that I created with my friends, and there was definitely the characters was like self-inserts because we just wanted to explore the worlds. But eventually, I began like adding plot line, giving proper character arcs and character development, and it became a proper story.
And when you were, making putting this together, and your mind was this, this is just something creative I'm doing, or did you really think like, what, I'm gonna get this published. I'm writing a book.
Well, you know, I feel like I didn't really think about getting it published at the first. The publishing idea, it just kind of came after because, okay, my parents,
Mm-hmm.
they saw my book and they were like, wow, this has like potential. Like, wow, we should actually, try to get it published. Maybe it's something that can like become something in the future, a published
Yeah,
book in the future. So I feel like that actually came a lot from my parents.
that's great. And I always hear about these like teachers who inspired, students. And so, how did your that teacher respond when it did become published?
She was happy and she was like, she was like excited and she's just kind of like, keep me posted on what
Yeah,
happens with the book and where it goes. I really want to know more and I'm really proud of you. And it was just, warm,
yeah.
positive.
That's awesome. And so I've read some of the reviews and I saw that you were named alongside Riordan and other like incredible authors. And I'm a huge Percy Jackson fan. So when I saw that, I was like, oh, he's checked. This is going to be great. So what was it like to be named among those types of people?
Well, it's an honor to be named alongside such illustrious authors, and I'm glad that my book has been getting a lot of positive reception. Like I always look back at my writing and start thinking like, how can I improve this? There's so
Mm,
many things here that I just want to change. And, it's really good that I'm getting positivity from having been published. And, I got it published in the first place. And that's really encouraged like my passion for writing. And, there's also like these like sort of side effects of it. Like I've also
mm,
found interest in a broader range of topics than I did before. Like before, I wasn't much of a fan of history, but now I have a more appreciation for history than I did before. And a
right.
lot of those topics connect back to writing. I'm creating my own
Right.
history for the story, right? I should
Yeah.
look at real history. And it's also good to have like a platform to talk about all these things, and like
Hmm.
that's part of my future. Like I can encourage kids and young people to like, from the voice of a young person, to encourage
Yeah.
them to pursue their dreams that might seem far-fetched or
Right.
distant, and that if you persevere you can achieve those dreams.
And were there others who maybe didn't, maybe you didn't always have positive feedback? Were there people along the way that just were doubting?
So I guess there was no one really in my life who was doubting, because like all the people I'm surrounded by are just positive people.
Good, good,
But
good.
there were those reviews, some of them
Mm,
were a little bit offensive. Some of them,
yeah.
they were just like, oh, it's a child writing a story. Wow.
Mm,
But there were lots of ones that were looked a bit mean at first, but they gave like good feedback, like how I could
yeah.
write better next time. And so, for the just blatant mean ones, you just go, whatever. And for the ones that give good
Exactly.
constructive feedback, you just go, wow, I'll keep that in mind. And,
Definitely.
that's one of the good things about feedback,
Yeah,
criticism.
yeah. So your character, Keonis, is that how you pronounce it?
Kionius, but you can just call him
Ionius.
Kai.
Okay,
Kai
Kai,
is
Kai.
better.
Okay. Um, I mean, I appreciate the name because a lot of the times kids will read these books and be like, I don't see my name in these books. So I just wanted to say that. And also, I kind of relate. He said he was adopted. I was also adopted from Ethiopia, and so it's not something that usually the main characters have. And the fact that he has purple eyes, and when I was reading that, it just made me feel like there was, there's a sort of marking that happens. And I was wondering if that was an intentional thing, a theme, or you were just, he needs to be unique. So we're just going to give him purple eyes.
Yeah, so one of the funny things about that is that I didn't initially like decide, oh, I want to add this theme in. It just
Mm,
manifested. And I think that's really cool because like
right.
it's just a subconscious thing that just came up in the story.
Yeah.
And I think like this feeling of being different or set
Mm-hmm.
apart is something a lot of teenagers experience, whether due to innate factors like skin color, eye color, sexual
Right.
orientation, things like that. And I don't know if it's a universal thing. I don't know.
Mm,
I don't know, but lots the example in the story, they were a bit extreme. Like in real life, there's very very few people who have purple eyes, and
yeah.
but like the idea is somewhat the same in that everyone's going to feel different about having a marking. Everyone is going
Mm-hmm.
to treat you differently based on those markings, and I
Right.
mean, evolution, genetics, nature's chaos, because
Mm,
nature is really chaotic. It's all of these. They think they create diversity. It just happens. Diversity
right.
happens, and there's like a
Yeah.
lot of people who will be like, "No, we don't want diversity." And there's going to be a
Mm,
lot of people who are like, "Diversity is not that important." But I think that stories are a medium for people to experience things they haven't, and for
right.
people who are different to relate to someone and experience things through the eyes of characters who may think differently or may think the same. And, there should always be a variety in character experiences, and that's a really valuable thing.
Yes, it is. I think how intricate the universe you've created kind of shows allows for that diversity to play out in a pretty unique way. Even if it's not a marking that might be common, it allows people to interpret it and kind of relate. So I really appreciated that. So do you have a favorite? Now you're an author. Are there people are probably listening to you for recommendations. So, do you have a favorite book, author, series?
Yeah, so like I read a lot of authors' works. Like
Mm,
I like a lot of authors. Like James
yeah,
Dashner has like cool futuristic settings. Cassandra Clare has like strong world building and variety in character experiences. Sean David Hutchinson has like these existential themes. And most of all, like Rick Riordan, he has like a lot of diversity in characters, like quick
Mhm.
action-packed plots, and
Yeah,
funny and intriguing myth-based world building. So I feel like Rick Riordan is like my favorite author. Like I just feel like he's my
yeah,
favorite author.
definitely.
As for books, it's like I can't pick a favorite. It's really hard
Hmm.
for me to pick a favorite or even a group of
Definitely.
favorites because so many books convey different ideas, different experiences, and I can choose one.
Yeah. Well, I thought it was pretty powerful for a coming of age tale to be written by someone who is also coming of age. And so I wondered what inspired your writing style, because you were mentioning how some of the reviews, they just kind of see it like, oh, it's a kid writing a book and kind of can write off. But I think that you do bring a fresh perspective in this genre because of your age. And so, what are some things that inspired that?
Yeah. So my style of writing came from like younger perspectives because I started writing when I was younger. There was a
Mm-hmm.
time between when I wrote the book and like now that like my perception of the world and maturity just changed completely. And now I look back at the book and it's not how I'd write a book now. It's it's
Mm-hmm.
different than what I'd write now, and that's kind of interesting. Like
Yeah.
when I began writing, I wasn't thinking too much into themes. I wasn't thinking too much into complexity. I just wanted a childish fantasy land with a dark and
Yeah.
the lights and exploration and wonder. Then I became
Right.
older and I was like, hmm, these simplistic topics are actually more complex and nuanced than I would think initially. Like, not everything's black and white. You can
Mm,
almost kind of see that in the world of the story. Like, if you read the book, there's like some things that seem simple on the surface, but don't get as simple deeper down.
right.
And, even like the timeline of the three drafts of my book show a changing perspective. First
Yeah.
draft, it was called like a divine revelation or something. It had a straightforward plot. It had a lot more exploration, and there was more about the world itself.
Mm,
Second draft, it was less world, a little bit more plot, but it still was a lot about exploration. It was still about just fantasy lands,
yeah.
childish dream kind of thing. Third and final
Hmm.
draft, it has a lot less world. It has more plots and more character arc. And,
Yeah.
so the Dorn Inferno did in fact age alongside me. You'll see like
Yeah.
relics of my childhood thinking, see things from like my older and more mature mind, and they'll just exist alongside each other. Another like
Yeah.
another thing is that I feel Kai's worldview kind of reflects the worldview I had as a kid to some degree because I wrote what I
Mhm.
knew. And
Right. Of course.
Kai's head is filled with questions all the time. Like there's so many like sentences just end with question marks because he's just always
Mhm.
questioning things. And I think that's one of the things that about being a kid that I don't often see in other stories. The fact that we're
Mhm.
just wondering about random things all the time.
Right. Definitely.
And sometimes we like
Uh,
confuse ourselves with our questions and how we think about
yeah.
things. And another funny thing is that I think Kirkus Reviews describes the speech of my characters as stilted. And to be
Mm,
honest, like at first that sounds kind of negative, but then if I think about it, a lot of books they have a really smooth speech that's just not
mm,
present in real life. In real life, you
right.
talk kind of abruptly. You
Yes.
talk ideas. You things just kind of pop into your head and you say them or you don't say them.
Exactly.
And
Right.
and that's kind of a way that like I talk, that other people I know talk. That it's kind of just seen in my writing that like I just applied my knowledge of how I interact with people to how characters in the book interact with each other. And although it kind of
Yeah.
appears as stilted, it is a reflection of how I talk and how other people I know talk.
Yeah, and it's real. I think that's where the value comes from. It's not, even though you are writing it, it doesn't feel scripted. And so the people, when the reader um, kind of steps into the story, it makes them feel like, okay, this is just like, this is actually real. This could happen. Um, so
Could
how
happen.
exactly. um, what was the? I know you said that you didn't necessarily, like, when you first started, think of it becoming a publication, but like, what was that process like in your experience as a young person in that? Because I know there are plenty of adult authors who struggle through that process, and it takes many, many years. And so, yeah, just interested to hear about that.
Yeah, so, I wanted to keep on writing, but eventually, just like put a stop to it. Just stop writing the third draft. We need to get this book out. So,
Right.
first, the web. Marvelous tool. You just search a
Mhm.
bunch for general publishers, which, big name publishers kind of came up, like the ones you see on
Right.
like the big name books. And like, I needed I had a manuscript, I had a blurb, like a blurb meaning like the kind of like back cover thing you write about your book.
Yeah. 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 Got it.
Um, and that's kind of what is needed. Just send like first 10 pages of manuscript to like the publishers. And what happened was that we didn't often get replies. We just kept
Mm.
on like just ghosts. So
Yeah.
we began like, my parents and I, and we just kind of like their communication with like friends. We made like our searches more specific, like genre, young adults,
Right.
fantasy, those things like that. And
Yeah.
we kept still didn't get a lot of replies. It took a while, and meanwhile I was just like, okay, maybe I won't get a publisher. Why don't I try
Mm.
self-publishing? So I started that process. Like if you look right behind me, there's like that painting on the
Yeah.
wall. That's
Yeah.
something I painted as a cover for a self-publishing process.
Wow.
So, I was using this thing called BookBaby, which is an Amazon service,
Okay.
and I was thinking, I'd go the self-publishing route. Then Three Rooms Press, my current publisher, they contacted us, and that was like, just like
Right.
an actual publisher just like contacted me
Yeah.
about publishing my book. So that was like it was pretty amazing. And so I went with Three Rooms Press, and
Yeah.
there was a contract, and like I signed it, my parents signed it because I'm a minor,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
they give us a 14-month timeline for like what we have to do before publishing, because like
Mm.
the process beforehand doesn't just take like one day and it's out. It's not like that.
Right. Yeah. And
There
so,
were oh
which, okay, so you had mentioned the point of like where you weren't, you were being ghosted, people weren't responding. During those times, like how did you stay encouraged? Was there ever a moment where you were like, you know what, let's just stop. Nothing's coming from it.
yeah, so I feel like what I did was like, need to think about this for a second.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I feel like what I kind of did was just like not focus on it too much, because like there
Mm,
was like school to occupy me. So I
true,
was just kind
true.
of like, okay, I'll think about it when my parents talk about it,
Right.
like, or when I see something in like email that indicates something. And
Yeah.
self-publishing, that's a good route to go. Like I had a self-publishing project, that was
Mm,
like, oh, I have an option. I still have the option of going self-publishing if it doesn't work out.
right. Yeah.
But Three Rooms Press came by. We had negotiations. They had an
Mm,
editor. They had a cover artist. I negotiated with the cover artist to create this beautiful cover here.
yeah.
There was also that like sort of you know pandemic came by. Then
Right.
there were like visions of like author events that are just kind of like, nope,
Mm,
gone. No author events for you,
yeah.
not in person. But there's still the online author events, and a lot of the promotion had to go online. And
True.
so I don't. Before, I didn't use social media very much. Like
Yeah.
I wasn't a big fan of it. And
Mm.
Three Rooms Press literally had to teach me like, how do you use Twitter and Instagram? Like,
Right.
what are these newfangled technologies? No, not that. But
Yeah.
they gave me a crash course. My parents would be like, "Okay, come to the kitchen. You need to do your social media hour each day." And I was like, "No, I don't want to."
Wow. It's like the
And
opposite. Most teenagers, they need to be off of
yeah,
it.
there's like a neighborhood cat who comes around, so he's adorable. So I just took pictures of him, put him on the Twitter feed, and
Oh man.
then the book came out. Zoom author events, because at
Mm,
least there's a silver lining that I don't have to fly across the country to attend a
right.
DC author event.
Yeah. 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 So when you did get this publisher, they reached out to you. How did your friends respond? Because obviously they were kind of a big part of the initial vision. And so and you had been discussing the ideas over time. And so how did they react?
So it was actually kind of funny. So multiple friends are just disinterested. Like before the publishing part, they were just like, "Oh, cool, you're writing a book,
Wow.
okay." And I tried to get one of them like, "Oh, write with me," but in the end, that
Yeah.
didn't happen. But my brother
Mm,
was pretty interested. He and I, we still like discuss things about the story, and he takes
yeah.
an interest in story. And there was one friend who was
Mm,
not at all associated with like the games we played.
okay.
She just kind of heard about me writing tangentially, and she took like an active
Yeah.
interest in it, and we kind
Wow.
of like
Yeah.
began like writing, discussing, and like we kind of like talked together about the things, and she helped me uh discuss Neurasian culture. Oh, Neurasia is like
Wow.
one of the kingdoms in the book.
Got it.
And
Yeah.
there's a character who's definitely dedicated to her. And then when
Yeah.
my
That's
book got
amazing.
published, yeah, when my book got published, I think a lot of them didn't even realize that they were a part of that, that they were that
Yeah.
childhood games. I had to like tell
Oh.
them. There was a lot of encouragement and excitement from them though. And I like, when I told them, there definitely were some who were like, "Oh, I'm so glad I was part of this journey, and I was
Right.
contributing." And
Exactly. And so those ideas, I bet, over all those years, you couldn't have captured it all in just one book. So do you have, plans for future ones for the series, or just if you would like to explore different genres and things like that?
so there are like a lot of ideas I still want to develop. Got to do that arm wave to indicate. Okay, so
Yes.
aside from the fact that El Gloria will in fact be a series, I spent years creating the world of El Gloria, so there's a lot in it
Yeah.
that I definitely really want to think about and explore. There are
Right.
10 provinces in the nation of El Gloria. I could recite their names off the top of my head. There
Mm.
are other worlds in the cosmos. There's complexity to the magic system that wasn't shown to its fullest in the book. Like, I
Mm.
have a strong interest in programming, and that's really manifested through the magic system. Because, like,
Yeah.
every book spell in the book, like, even the ones that don't have their names mentioned have like a specific structure and everything that's all
Mm.
specifically designed. Um,
Yeah.
I have other magic systems too. Like some were just name dropped in the book, but they're all fleshed out. So
Right.
that's kind of how I am. And
Yeah.
a lot of the like when I sometimes I write like short stories, and they're kind of like they don't get publicized. They just exist in my
Mm.
head and my
Yeah.
Google Docs. But they start from world building concepts. Like I'm like, oh, one we talked about this magical realm that's tangential to the El Gloria's universe, and why don't I
Mm.
this like write a story set in that place about a character in that place?
Yeah.
And I think I could even go into sci-fi tropes, like because the way I conceptualize the magic system and
Mhm.
all the world building, it's not localized to like the concept of Earth. It
Mhm.
can be like applied to like a space opera if I wanted to, or like whatever. So I feel like I could do sci-fi too. What I
Yeah.
feel like doesn't really do it for me though is realistic fiction, because like unless it's very powerful or relatable, which I it's not really my genre of preference.
Yeah. Got it. Got it. And so I'm wondering, like, if you have. I know you said that you weren't, you know, big on social media before, but now you do have a platform, which means that you have influence. And so, do you have any words of advice for young people who I can see just like you have so many ideas, and so there's your friends and other people out there, little younger kids, um, who have worlds in their heads and they don't know how to get it out or express it. Like, what would be your kind of motivation to them or encouragement that they should take steps?
Yeah, so I'm pretty proud of myself. I came up with 4 words: passion,
Yes.
research,
Okay.
organization, and sacrifice. They're
Yeah.
not as serious as they sound, though, like not literal sacrifice. But number one advice is to keep yourself motivated with the passion of writing.
Mhm.
Your passion is what carries you through writing the entire book. When you really want to write something, you'll make it through the writer's block. You'll make it through the issues.
Mhm.
You'll get to the end because you're passionate about it. Finishing a book is one of the biggest milestones in the process, but I don't think that it's the hugest part of it.
Mm.
For me,
Yeah.
my biggest enjoyment was the journey, like writing the
Mm.
book. You know,
Right.
even when I was done, like I said, I kept on wanting to change things and write more. And I feel like, you know, publishing was really great, but if I hadn't gone to publish, I think I would still have been happy. I'd still have kept on writing. You know,
Yeah.
writing was, it's not the ambition that drove me, it was
Mm.
my love for writing.
Right. Yeah.
Number two, research.
Mhm.
I did a lot of work and research and a lot of stuff like Google searching and library searching to make sure things mesh together well in Algloria. Like a lot of the
Mm.
things I did was spend time with mythology. I took what I liked and took what I liked, didn't take what I disliked, changed
Right.
it. Uh, Also made sure that like different parts of mythology interacted in somewhat logical ways, so I didn't get confused when like one
Mm.
mythical being encountered another mythology's spell or something. You know, I made sure the magic system had a set of rules and that it could be used systematically, so I didn't have to worry that there was a plot hole in there somewhere. I spent a lot of
Mm.
time making sure the background was all fleshed out. You know, I even like created like at least three languages in order to add a
Wow.
background to the world, which caused me to develop an interest in Latin, which is kind of cool. Like I have a interest in
Wow.
languages
Yeah.
now. And organization is the third one.
Mm.
So I have like an entire like Google Drive folder filled with everything that I could ever wants to in the Algloria world. You know, I note down everything
Yeah.
in there. One's about like magic systems. Another one is about
Mm.
like character sheets and you know things like that. Part of organization is to plan out what you want to write. I didn't really do that for my first drafts, but I'm glad I did that for my third drafts because it
Yeah.
helps to keep track of the connections between events and make sure you fill up the plot holes that could manifest. And if you know if you have a document or chart or whatever to map out your story's events, it really helps.
Right.
For fantasy, for example, part of that planning is having a concrete idea of the rules of your worlds. Remember, I was talking about like research. And
Mhm.
there's something that's kind of, I guess a lot of people don't think about this for characters, but characters are actually like, they're their own people, so to speak. Like,
Mm.
you know, you can put feelings in them and you can put them in
Yeah.
situations, but in the end, you don't tell them what to do. You decide,
Mm.
you figure out what they would do
Yeah.
and you change the situation so that they would do that. They have free will in essence.
Mhm.
You don't make them do anything. You just make sure that they're in the right circumstances to do it.
Mm.
And then sacrifice. It's not as scary as it sounds. It's not like, you know, like nothing like that. But
Yeah.
at times this idea of like planning things and figuring out your character's motives and all that, you need to give up parts of the story in
Mm.
order to allow others to flourish. Like
Yeah.
some writers call it killing your darlings, which is why I called it sacrifice. But basically, you know, my book had a lot of events in its storyline, a lot of world building exploration. Like, if I recall, he went to four other kingdoms in the story,
Wow.
and a lot of that I had to remove it because otherwise the plot
Mm.
it was slowed down, it didn't move as fast, and it there was
Yeah.
plot holes. And so the book ended up reducing to half its original size,
Wow.
and I had to remove a lot of my darlings from the book.
Mm.
And you know, stories they require you to think about what you're doing, change
Mhm.
some things, even if it's not always what you'd want to do. You know, you can't have your cake and you can't eat it at the
Mm.
same time. One or the other.
Yeah. Which is basically, I mean, I think that's life, you know, it's always full of trade-offs, and it's good that you're able to make those decisions, and obviously it went well for you, you know, in the end. So is there anything else? Thank you so much for talking with me and telling us about your book. I wish you the best. And I hope that you have more opportunities, and definitely for all of those who are watching, you can check the book out on the DCPL library. But yeah, is there anything else?
I have nothing to say. Is if anyone has questions, you know, I happy to answer.
Yeah. Well, if anyone does, you can reach him on his someone's his t-shirt.
Yeah.
Do you sell merch now?
No, my parents just made that. I do have a Twitter and Instagram handle if you want to follow me. I can put
Yes,
that
in
in
the
the
chat.
private
Yeah,
chat. So, and I have a website.
yeah.
So,
We'll put that in there. Mhm. All right. Well, I hope that you have a good rest of your day, which is what time is it there now? Still beginning, right?
it's 1:30, not
Yeah,
very
yeah,
late.
yeah, yeah. And yeah, just keep keep in touch, and I wish you the best.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you for having me. And um, I hope everyone has a good day. Hope the weather is not too bad, and yeah, goodbye.